Imagine getting off a 10-hour flight, dragging your suitcase up the driveway, already thinking about the shower you're going to take, the meal you're about to eat, maybe even surprising your fiancé 2 days earlier than planned, and instead, you're met with flashing lights bouncing off your front windows, 2 cops in your yard, and half the neighborhood gawking from their lawns like it's free Friday night entertainment. And to top it all off, your neighbor, the one who's always out there watering plants she doesn't even like, is standing there smug, because she's the one who called the police on you, swearing you were a stranger breaking into your own house. Yeah, that happened. And I wish I could say that was the worst part, but no. The worst part was walking inside and realizing she hadn't just called the cops on me. She had moved herself into my house like it was a damn Airbnb. Now, let me back up a second. Scottsdale, Arizona, quiet street called Alderbend Drive. Those big desert mansions where everybody knows who drives what car and when somebody waters their lawn too early. That Friday, Lorraine Pritchard, she's across the street. The self-appointed sheriff of the block sees me get out of this SUV, rolling my bag, sunglasses still on, moving at my own pace. I guess in her mind, that screamed intruder. She grabs her phone, tells dispatch a suspicious man is about to enter a vacant home. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking about washing airplane air off my skin. So by the time I step on the porch, I've got sirens in my ears, and here come 2 patrol cars crunching the curb. One officer shouts, "Sir, step away from the door." And I'm like, "Excuse me? This is my home." But they're already reaching for their belts, because Lorraine's over there pointing like she just saved the neighborhood. I hand them my ID, let them run it. Checks out, obviously. But it doesn't matter. The damage is done. Every neighbor on the block's peeking through blinds or pretending to water their roses, whispering like they just stumbled onto an episode of Cops. And Lorraine? She lifts her chin and says, "I saw someone unfamiliar, so I acted." That's what a good neighbor does. Good neighbor? That phrase rattled in my head when I finally got the door open and this wall of lavender candles and chicken stew hit me. Because nothing says empty house like stew simmering in the kitchen, right? I take one step in, and there are pink women's sandals by the door. Not mine. Not my fiancé's. Definitely not welcome. I keep going in the living room. There's an open bottle of Chardonnay, 2 wine glasses, lipstick marks and all, a throw blanket draped across my couch like someone had just napped there. In my kitchen, groceries I never bought, leftovers in containers I don't own, apples stacked in a bowl. My fridge had turned into hers. And Lorraine, standing right behind me, doesn't even blink. I was safeguarding it, she says, folding her arms, as if moving into my house uninvited is some kind of neighborhood watch badge of honor. We walk down the guest wing, and that's when it hits me just how far she'd gone. Suitcases lined neatly along the wall, a laundry basket of folded clothes. On the nightstand, a framed picture of her and her girlfriends holding up wine glasses like they're in Napa Valley. And you can imagine what my face looked like. This wasn't checking in. This was living here. So I ask, "How the hell did you even get in?" And she says, perfectly calm, "I had a key. Back when I chaired the security committee, we kept spares. Mine was never collected." I swear, my jaw almost locked from clenching it so tight. She had been using a years-old HOA spare key to come and go. And the cops are standing there, scribbling notes, clearly uncomfortable because what started as them almost cuffing me had now flipped into a full-blown trespassing case on her. But she isn't embarrassed. Not even close. She's annoyed. Annoyed that I'm not thanking her. Because on top of moving in, she'd also been rifling through my mail. Yep, credit card statements, bank notices, even my insurance letter, all opened and stacked on her nightstand. When I call her out, she actually says, "You should be grateful. I caught a late fee before it got worse." Grateful for her pawing through my life like she was doing me a favor. That was the moment the whole thing tipped from surreal into insane. Now here's where it twists. The neighbors, oh, they loved it. They had themselves a show. Some backed her, whispering she was just being cautious. Others shook their heads, saying she crossed a line. But either way, everybody had an opinion, and suddenly my humiliation wasn't just inside my house. It was on the damn street, being traded over hedges like hot gossip. Couple nights later, I'm hauling trash to the curb, and my older neighbor Victor, quiet guy, walks his terrier Duke every evening, stops me. He says, "You know, I saw her carrying grocery bags into your house last week. Figured you asked her to check in. Guess I was wrong." That floored me. She wasn't just lying to me. She'd been telling other neighbors she had my permission. and they believed her. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, the room was packed. Lorraine stands up before the agenda even starts, claiming she's the victim of a smear campaign. She says she acted in the best interest of the community, and I can feel half the room already split. But then I stand, and I lay it out plain. She lived in my house for 2 weeks. She used my wine, my kitchen, my guest room. She opened my mail. She told you I abandoned the place. That's not neighborly concern. That's trespassing. And right then, another neighbor, Iris, pipes up. Says Lorraine told her I'd given permission. Gasps ripple through the room. Lorraine's mask cracks. That was the moment her credibility slipped. Still, she doesn't quit. She goes on a whisper campaign, telling people I'm overreacting, that I'm suing her out of spite. And I had to ask myself, do I let it slide, chalk it up as suburban drama, or do I take it further? Because the more I thought about her sipping wine in my sunroom, telling people I'd abandoned my house, the more I knew letting it go meant giving her power. So I drove downtown, filed official charges trespassing, unlawful possession of a key, tampering with mail. I signed my name, and suddenly it wasn't just neighborhood gossip anymore, it was legal. And here's the thing, once the papers were served, the whole street shifted. Lorraine, once queen of Alderbend Drive, barely showed her face. Quick walks to her car, no more holding court on the corner. The people who'd backed her? They still whispered, but quieter now, behind closed doors. And me? I started getting nods, small greetings, people who'd stayed neutral finally showing their cards. It wasn't everybody, but it was enough. When the first hearing came, Lorraine showed up in a navy suit, eyes straight ahead, refusing to look at me. Nothing dramatic happened, just procedures, but walking out of that courthouse I felt lighter. Not because I'd won anything yet, but because I'd done what most people avoid. I'd pushed back. Even when it meant stepping into the spotlight, even when it meant being the subject of every conversation on the block. Back home, that night, I poured myself a glass of my own Cabernet and sat in the sunroom, the same one she'd used for her wine nights. And it hit me. This wasn't just about my house. It was about boundaries. About how quickly someone else can decide them for you if you don't stand up. Peace without respect isn't peace. It's quiet resentment. And respect only comes when you make it crystal clear. This is where it stops. So that's my story. A trip abroad turned into cops on my lawn, a neighbor in my guest room, a courtroom battle brewing, and a street divided down the middle. But I'll say this, I'd rather be the guy who drew the line than the one who let someone else rewrite it for me. Now let me ask you, if you came home and found your neighbor living in your house, eating your food, drinking your wine, telling people they were doing you a favor, what would you do? Would you let it slide for the sake of peace? Or would you take it to court like I did? Drop your thoughts below, because I promise, this one's gonna split opinions right down the middle.